Camilla Harrowton, heiress to the Harrowton shipping empire, sat poised at her corner table, surrounded by high society's elite, bankers, influencers, and plastic smiles. Her laughter, sharp and practiced, sliced through the air like glass. And then it happened. Dear viewer, before we begin, please write in the comments where you are watching from, and support us with a like and a subscribe. A tray slipped. A single wine glass tipped from its perch, shattering inches from her Louboutin heels. Red wine splattered across the silk hem of her cream dress. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Camilla froze. Her eyes slowly lifted to meet the waitress standing over her. Young, black, calm, and absolutely still. What did you do? Camilla's voice dripped with venom, loud enough for every head in the room to swivel. I'm so sorry, ma'am, the waitress said, lowering her eyes but not her head. Her voice was soft, steady, the red name tag on her apron read Jade. Camilla stood, towering over Jade. Sorry, she sneered, gesturing to her stained dress. You think that's enough? Jade remained still. No, not tonight. Not here. Camilla snapped, her voice escalating. You're going to get down on your knees, right here, and apologize for ruining a $20,000 gown. The room held its breath. Jade blinked slowly. Her chest rose and fell once. Twice. I will not kneel, she said clearly. Camilla blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. Excuse me. I said no. Jade repeated, her voice firmer now. I won't kneel for you. Not for this. Not for anything. Gasps. A dropped fork. One man muttered, Jesus Christ, under his breath. Camilla's face flushed a dangerous shade of red. You people really don't know your place anymore, do you? Jade didn't flinch. Maybe it's time you learn mine. It was only a few seconds, but in those seconds, the entire restaurant became a stage. And Jade, with nothing but her dignity, became the only person who looked powerful. Camilla's mouth twisted into a cruel smirk. You're done here. Fired. Blacklisted. I'll make sure you never serve another table in this city. Jade turned to leave, her steps measured and calm. But as she walked away, a truth flickered behind her composed expression. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a woman with a story, a past, a plan. And Camilla Harrowton had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The rain came later that night, washing the city's streets clean, or at least trying to. Jade Thompson sat alone on the edge of her small twin bed in a crumbling studio apartment on the south side. Her work apron lay in a heap on the floor, the red wine stains still dark against the cotton. Her phone buzzed on the windowsill. For missed calls. 2 voicemails. All from the restaurant's general manager. She ignored them. Instead, she opened the top drawer of her nightstand. Inside, a stack of folded documents, a worn university ID, and a thesis with her name typed neatly on the cover. Jade Thompson, M.A. in Political Science, Columbia University. She traced her fingers over the cover, her jaw tight. 3 years ago, she was defending policy reform models to Ivy League professors. Now she was being told to kneel like a servant for a glass of spilled wine. She whispered the words out loud, like tasting bitterness. Kneel. The humiliation hadn't broken her. It had woken something. Jade stood, pulled her laptop from the closet, and opened a search window. Her fingers moved with purpose. She wasn't just looking up Camilla Harrowton. She was digging into the Harrowton name. The screen filled with results. Luxury yachts, gala photos, charity foundations. But Jade wasn't fooled by the public image. Not anymore. She opened a new tab. Public records. Court filings. Shell companies. Property transfers. Campaign donations. Offshore accounts. She might have lost her job. But what Camilla didn't know, what no one in that restaurant knew, was that the woman she tried to destroy once interned with the Attorney General's office. And Jade hadn't forgotten how to follow money, smell corruption, or peel back the gilded wallpaper that covered up rot. As the rain drummed against the glass, Jade narrowed her search and leaned in. Behind every fortune, there is a crime, and she was going to find it. It started with a number. A minor inconsistency on a land transfer filed by one of the Harrowton trusts. The kind of thing no one notices unless they're looking. And Jade was. She sat in the back corner of a public library, her laptop plugged into the wall, Wi-Fi spotty but functional. Around her, the world moved slowly. Children whispering near the picture books, an elderly man snoring softly in periodicals. But in Jade's mind, the past and present were colliding like tectonic plates. A $1 million property purchased through a holding company named Selwyn Estates LLC. She clicked. Owned by Harrowton Global Initiatives, headquartered in the Cayman Islands. Another click. The paper trail led to a donation. No, a bribe. Disguised as a charitable contribution to a zoning commissioner's relief fund. Same commissioner who approved a controversial luxury development 3 years ago. The pieces were beginning to fit. Jade sat back, her heart racing. This wasn't just tax evasion. This was city-level corruption. Pay-to-play. Backroom deals dressed as philanthropy. She reached for her notebook, flipping past scribbled schedules and old rent reminders. She wrote one word in bold at the top of a new page. Leverage. And beneath it, the name she had already uncovered. Camilla Harrowton. Victor Harrowton, father. District Councilman Darren Phelps. Judge Noreen Wexler. That last one made her pause. She remembered the name from her law clinic days. Judge Wexler was known for ruling favorably on high-dollar real estate disputes and for a lavish birthday gala held last year at the Harrowton estate. Jade underlined the judge's name twice. This wasn't personal anymore. This was systemic. But for Jade, it would always be personal. Because when Camilla Harrowton demanded she kneel, she hadn't just tried to humiliate her. She'd reminded her, violently, publicly, that in their world, power expected submission. But Jade wasn't kneeling. She was digging. And this time, she was digging with purpose. Camilla Harrowton was trending again. A photo of her in a shimmering Dior gown, smiling beside a senator at a climate gala, floated across Jade's screen like a lie wrapped in gold. Jade stared at it, unblinking. Philanthropist. Advocate. Socialite. But not daughter of a man who used shell companies to buy up housing in black neighborhoods and evict long-standing tenants to build luxury condos. That part never made the press releases. Jade clicked through photos, Camilla laughing with governors, cutting ribbons at children's hospitals. Her father behind her in some shots, a hand resting proudly on her shoulder like a seal of dynastic approval. But Jade knew better. Behind every staged photo was another erased story. Families displaced. Politicians bought. And a woman so steeped in privilege she believed herself untouchable. Until now. Back in her apartment, Jade laid out everything. Documents, printouts, a tangled map of names and connections that stretched across her floor like a conspiracy board. But this wasn't a theory. This was evidence. Camilla wasn't just cruel. She was complicit. Jade had found emails from Camilla's personal assistant, leaked through a whistleblower site Jade frequented. One stood out. Delete the zoning report. Dad says it's better if there's no paper trail. And tell Darren we'll double his speaking fee if he keeps pushing the vote. CH. The message wasn't signed Camilla, but the initials, the date, and the context were damning. Jade stared at it, breath caught in her chest. They thought the poor black waitress didn't matter, that no one would believe her, that she'd stay broken and quiet. But Jade hadn't broken. She'd been forged. And she was about to become the one thing the Harrowtons never expected. A reckoning. Camilla Harrowton barely remembered the incident. To her, it was just another annoying PR cleanup after some waitress got emotional. Her publicist had issued a statement, bland, carefully worded, crafted to sound apologetic without admitting guilt. Ms. Harrowton regrets any misunderstanding and holds the utmost respect for all hospitality workers. The media moved on. Camilla didn't. Because deep down, in the places she never let anyone see, she hadn't forgotten the way Jade had looked at her. Not afraid, not groveling, but calm, defiant, like someone who saw straight through the pearls and perfume to the rot beneath. It unnerved her more than she liked to admit. Still, she had bigger things to worry about. Tonight, her family's flagship development, the Atria Towers was up for final approval. A billion-dollar project, built on land acquired through quiet evictions and legal loopholes. Camilla had personally lobbied for it, hosted the council members, poured the wine, made the promises. And now, just hours before the vote, her phone buzzed with an email marked urgent from an anonymous sender. She opened it. Inside were attachments, dozens, screenshots, financial statements, a web of shell corporations, all leading back to the Harrowton family. One line stood alone at the bottom. Truth isn't a threat. It's a mirror. Let's see how you look in it. Camilla's face went pale. For the first time in years, she felt the icy breath of fear. Not the fear of scandal, but of exposure. Of everything her family built collapsing under the weight of their own deceit. She tried to call her father. Voicemail. Tried the family lawyer. No answer. Camilla stood in her penthouse, staring out over the city they believed they owned. And somewhere, in a modest apartment across town, Jade was watching the same skyline, but with a different goal. Not to own it, to change it. The flash drive felt small in Jade's hand, but heavy. Inside it, emails, ledgers, meeting transcripts, wire transfers. A latticework of lies wrapped in expensive suits and legal jargon. She'd spent weeks assembling it, line by damning line. She hadn't planned on becoming a whistleblower. She didn't want the spotlight. But after what happened in that restaurant, Jade understood something she could never unsee. Silence protects power, and she was done being silent. At the legal aid office downtown, she met with Olivia Reyes, a friend from grad school turned civil rights attorney. They hugged, awkward but real. Olivia had heard about the incident on social media, but hadn't reached out. I didn't know if you wanted company, Olivia said softly. Jade handed her the flash drive. I don't want company, she said. I want fire. Olivia raised an eyebrow. You're sure about this? If I wasn't sure, I'd still be serving foie gras to billionaires who think we're furniture. Olivia nodded slowly. Okay, then we build the case. Carefully, strategically. No leaks, no emotion, just facts and law. Jade exhaled. For the first time in weeks, she felt something like oxygen return to her lungs. Outside, traffic honked and life moved on. But inside, the wheels of justice, slow, creaky, often broken, had just started to turn. Back at home, Jade stared at her old waitress uniform. She didn't need it anymore. She folded it gently, placed it in a box, and taped it shut. She wasn't who they thought she was. And soon, neither was Camilla Harrowton. The first ripple came quietly. A city council aide was placed on administrative leave. No explanation, just a cryptic headline buried 3 pages deep in the local paper. The second ripple was louder. An investigative journalist, Malik Dorsey, posted a teaser thread online. A luxury real estate empire. A trail of silent evictions. A waitress who said no. Something's coming. The post caught fire. Jade watched it unfold from her laptop, heart pounding but steady. She had met with Malik in secret, passed him copies of key documents, kept her identity hidden for now. Why me? Malik had asked. Because you don't write fluff, Jade replied. You write about truth. He'd studied her, then nodded. Okay, but when this explodes, and it will, you'll be a target. Jade didn't flinch. I already was. Meanwhile, across the city, Camilla Harrowton scrolled through Malik's post with her fingers shaking slightly. She had dealt with bad press before. Petty scandals, a DUI cousin, a charity misfire. But this was different. This had teeth. She stormed into her father's study that evening. Victor Harrowton, sharp-suited and sharper-tongued, barely looked up. Fix it, he said coldly. I'm trying. But someone's leaking. Someone smart. Then get smarter. Camilla turned to leave, but paused. What if this isn't just about the land? Victor glanced up now, eyes narrowing. What do you mean? Camilla hesitated. Then, what if this is personal? Late at night, in a borrowed office at the Legal Aid Center, Jade sat hunched over her laptop, blue light casting her face in cold hues. Olivia was asleep on the couch, a legal pad draped across her chest like armor abandoned mid-battle. Jade's fingers danced across keys. She wasn't just sharing files anymore. She was building a narrative, one that the Harrowtons couldn't spin or silence. A timeline, names, connections, evictions tied directly to bribes, lawsuits buried in settlements, zoning boards reshaped through campaign donations. And she wasn't alone. Dozens of anonymous workers had begun sending in their own stories, janitors fired without cause, tenants pushed out without notice, restaurant staff who had endured Camilla's cruelty for years. One message stood out. She made my sister cry during chemo. Said the staff wing smelled like public housing. I quit the next day. Tell me what you need. Jade sat back, breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just about what happened to her. This was a pattern, and she was going to make sure it had a reckoning. Meanwhile, in a darkened penthouse, Camilla stared at her phone. The online whispers were growing louder. Her name was trending again, but this time, not with admiration. She scrolled through Malik Dorsey's latest post. A Harrowton aide once said, "She's got the charm of a guillotine wrapped in Chanel." Seems fitting. Camilla slammed the phone down. Find out who this waitress is, she barked into her intercom. Now. But the name Jade Thompson had already begun spreading through encrypted inboxes, legal circles, and newsroom whispers. Not as a victim, as a force. Jade arrived at the cafe early. It was quiet, tucked into a corner of the arts district, a place where conversations felt safe, not surveilled. She wore a simple blazer, no makeup, hair pulled back. Nothing flashy, but everything intentional. Across from her, Malik Dorsey sipped black coffee and scrolled through his notes. He looked up when she approached and gave a small nod. Word is, the Harrowtons are rattled. Jade sat down. Good. They've sent feelers to news outlets. Denials, counterclaims, veiled threats. But it's not working. This has legs. She folded her hands on the table. So what's next? Malik leaned in. I want to publish your story. The full thing. Not just the paper trail, the moment in the restaurant. The humiliation. The stand you took. Jade's jaw tensed. That moment wasn't the beginning. It was just the crack that let the light in. Malik nodded slowly. All the more reason to share it. People need to see what power looks like when it gets challenged. Not just taken down, but dismantled. She hesitated. Then, you'll protect my sources? Like steel vaults. She nodded once, slow and sure. Then let's begin. Across town, in a marble office lined with books she'd never read, Camilla Harrowton was handed a memo. It detailed a subpoena filed for records from her foundation. Attached was a photo. Jade Thompson, walking into the courthouse. Camilla's fingers trembled. She didn't say a word. But in her silence, something cracked, something deeper than reputation. Fear. Real, personal, earned fear. Because she had demanded a woman kneel. And now that woman was standing tall, while everything around Camilla began to fall. The invitations were gold embossed, scented, and insufferably pretentious. The Harrowton Foundation cordially invites you to an evening of elegance and impact. A gala for progress. Progress. Jade read the word twice and laughed under her breath. A cruel joke, considering the families evicted, the public officials bought, and the waitress they tried to erase. But this was the event, the one that mattered. Every politician, donor, and press outlet would be there. It was their cathedral, their masquerade, their echo chamber of power. And Jade was going. Olivia tried to stop her. We've already got the case. We're winning this through courts, not cameras. But Jade shook her head. This isn't just about court. It's about truth. Truth has to be seen. Felt. Heard. You know she'll try to humiliate you again, right? She won't get the chance. Jade slipped the invitation back into her bag. It hadn't come by accident. Someone inside the Harrowton machine had sent it, and signed, no note. Just a card. A message. An opening. And Jade planned to walk through it. Across the city, Camilla stood before a floor-length mirror, her gown shimmering like armor. Her mother adjusted her necklace with trembling fingers. "You'll smile, you'll speak, and you'll survive this," she said, trying to mask her nerves. Camilla didn't respond. She was staring at her reflection, but not seeing it. All she could think about was that girl. No, that woman, and the email. The story breaking online. The reporter. The heat closing in. And something else. The look in Jade's eyes when she refused to kneel. It wasn't defiance. It was prophecy. The Harrowton Gala shimmered like a dream spun from champagne and silk. Crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in gold. A string quartet played near the grand staircase. Cameras flashed, and polished heels clicked across marble floors that had never known hardship. Camilla stood at the center, a vision in silver. She smiled on cue, kissed cheeks, laughed like nothing was unraveling. But inside, every step felt like walking a plank. Across the room, a hush fell. Jade had arrived. She wasn't wearing designer. No entourage. No statement jewelry. Just a sleek black dress. Eyes sharp as truth, and presence that turned necks without trying. Camilla saw her and froze. Every hair on her neck lifted. Jade walked slowly through the crowd, cutting through the silk and whispers like a quiet storm. People parted. Conversations faltered. The quartet stuttered mid-note. She stopped 3 feet from Camilla. Silence. For a moment, they stood, 2 women on opposite ends of a moral battlefield. One built by generations of money, the other forged by fire. Camilla forced a smile. "I'm surprised you came." Jade tilted her head. "No, you're afraid I did." A flicker of something passed through Camilla's eyes. Shame, maybe, or guilt too deep to name. "You made your point," Camilla whispered. "You've humiliated me." But Jade's voice was calm. "You did that to yourself." Then she leaned in, so close only Camilla could hear. "And I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to end what you built on other people's pain." She stepped back. The lights dimmed. A speaker tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our surprise guest tonight, activist and legal advocate, Jade Thompson." The ballroom froze. And then, applause. One person, then another, then the entire room. Jade walked toward the stage. Camilla's world, once untouchable, began to crumble, not with screams, but with the sound of clapping hands and rising truth. The spotlight hit her like a sunrise. Jade stood behind the podium, calm and unwavering. The crowd, bejeweled, perfumed, impeccably dressed, sat poised, unsure whether to lean in or lean back. They had heard her name. Now they would hear her voice. She adjusted the microphone. "I wasn't invited here to speak," she began, her voice soft but resonant. "Not officially, but I was welcomed by truth. And truth doesn't need permission." Some guests exchanged looks. Others grew still. "I used to work at a place just like this," she continued. "Not as a guest, not as a speaker, but as a waitress. Invisible to some, disposable to others." Camilla, standing near the edge of the crowd, felt every word like a drop of acid on silk. "On one night, in this city," Jade said, "a woman demanded that I kneel. Not because I had failed, but because she needed to remind herself she was bigger than me." Her eyes scanned the room. "I didn't kneel. Not then. Not now. Because the ground they wanted me to bow on was built from stolen homes, silenced voices, and broken laws. And I stand, tonight, not alone." Behind her, a screen flickered to life. Documents, emails, names, financial trails. Gasps rose from the crowd. Some clutched their pearls, others their reputations. "I brought receipts," Jade said simply. Olivia, watching from the back, let out a quiet breath. Malik Dorsey raised his camera. Somewhere in the crowd, a city councilman's face drained white. Jade's voice sharpened. "This isn't just about me. It's about every tenant pushed out in silence. Every worker exploited under chandeliers. Every truth buried beneath marble floors." She paused. "I'm not here to burn it all down. I'm here to rebuild what should have never been destroyed." Applause began again, quiet at first, then rolling, then thunderous. Camilla didn't clap. She couldn't, because for the first time, the room wasn't looking at her. It was looking at the woman who refused to kneel and stood taller than them all. By morning, it was everywhere. Clips of Jade's speech flooded social media, news outlets, legal blogs. Her name trended not with scandal, but with strength. Waitress turned whistleblower shakes up high society gala. Jade Thompson, the woman who refused to kneel. Camilla Harrowton woke to flashing headlines, unanswered texts, and a pit in her stomach. Her father's voice thundered through the speakerphone. "You let her get to the stage? At our event?" "I didn't know," Camilla stammered. "You were supposed to manage this. You were supposed to control it." Camilla sat on the edge of her bed, fingers trembling. "She's not who we thought." "No," Victor growled. "She's worse. She's smart." The phone went dead. Later that afternoon, a subpoena arrived at the Harrowton Foundation's office. A formal investigation had been launched into zoning fraud, bribery, and financial misconduct. It wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real. Camilla's assistant whispered, "They're calling it the Harrowton Files now." Camilla barely heard her. In another part of the city, Jade stood before a classroom of young women, many of them interns, law students, aspiring activists. She hadn't asked for the speaking engagement, but they insisted. One girl raised her hand. "How did you find the strength to stand up there?" Jade smiled gently. "Because someone tried to take my dignity in public." She paused, and I realized it was mine to take back, in public. The room fell silent, not out of reverence, but out of recognition. Jade was no longer just a symbol. She was becoming a blueprint. The Harrowton offices, once buzzing with assistants and PR teams, now sat quiet, like a ballroom after the music stops. Camilla stood in her father's office, eyes fixed on the TV screen as the Attorney General gave a live press conference. "We have reason to believe multiple members of the Harrowton Foundation knowingly participated in financial misconduct, including the illegal acquisition of public land through forged rezoning documents and undisclosed donations to city officials." A reporter shouted, "Do these charges include Camilla Harrowton?" The Attorney General didn't flinch. "No one is above the law." Victor Harrowton swore under his breath. "They're making an example out of us." Camilla stared straight ahead. "No," she said softly. "They're telling a story." Victor turned sharply. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means we built a castle out of secrets," she whispered. And someone finally turned the lights on. He slammed his fist on the desk. "You think that girl did this alone?" Camilla met his eyes. "No, but she lit the match." Back in her modest apartment, Jade watched the same press conference with Olivia and Malik by her side. Olivia handed her a printed email. "This came in from the Department of Justice. They're requesting a formal statement. You're not just a witness now, Jade. You're the key." Jade nodded slowly, her face unreadable. "I didn't want power," she murmured. "I wanted dignity. But if they gave me a microphone, I'll use it." She stepped to the window, watching dusk fall across the city skyline. Behind her, Malik asked, "Do you think she regrets it? Making you kneel?" Jade didn't turn. "She regrets underestimating me." Camilla Harrowton sat in the back of a black SUV, silent, as it pulled through a side entrance of the city courthouse. No press, no cameras. Her father had pulled strings for discretion, but nothing about this felt private. Her palms sweated against the cold leather seats. Outside the tinted window, a group of protesters had gathered. Hand-painted signs read, "Land back. Truth forward. We are not invisible. No one is above the law." And one, painted in bold red letters, "She made U.S. kneel. Now we stand." Inside the courthouse, the walls felt closer than usual. Her lawyer briefed her, but she barely heard him. Something heavier filled her mind. Jade's voice at the gala. The applause that wasn't for her. The moment her reflection stopped looking like someone in control and started looking like someone exposed. Camilla was scheduled for a closed-door deposition, but leaks were already making headlines. Her name was now permanently linked to corruption, elitism, and the worst kind of arrogance, publicly weaponized power. Down the hall, Jade stood giving sworn testimony. Calm, poised, Facts flowing like a current, measured, unstoppable. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. The truth was heavy enough. When the elevator doors opened and their eyes met from opposite ends of the corridor, no words were exchanged. Just a look. Jade's gaze held no spite, no cruelty, only clarity. Camilla turned away first. Because for the first time in her life, she was standing in a world she didn't own, built by a woman she tried to bury. News anchors called it the reckoning. The Harrowton Foundation had gone into full collapse. Sponsors pulled out. Board members resigned. Their flagship real estate project, the Atria Towers, was halted mid-construction, now a half-finished monument to unchecked greed. But this wasn't just about one family. It was about a system that enabled them. And Jade Thompson had become the face of resistance. She didn't want it. She didn't crave attention or praise. But when local tenants' unions asked her to speak, she said yes. When schools requested workshops on economic justice, she showed up. And when young women of color, waitresses, students, interns, wrote to her about how that one moment at the restaurant gave them strength, she responded to every message. One night, after an interview, Malik turned to her. "You realize you've done more than take them down, right?" Jade looked up, quietly curious. "You built something," he said. "A model, a reminder. You gave people language to name what they've lived through, and a mirror to see their worth." Jade didn't respond right away. She was remembering her first shift at Maison du Ching, how she'd studied wine pairings like exams, how she'd been invisible, but always listening. "I didn't set out to become a symbol," she said at last. "You didn't," Malik replied. "You became a standard." That night, as she walked home, Jade passed the old restaurant. It had rebranded under new ownership, the name changed, the staff entirely different. But the marble floors were the same. She stepped inside for a moment, not to reclaim anything, but to remind herself how far she'd come. The maitre d' asked politely, "Table for one?" Jade smiled softly. "No," she said. "I'm not here to be served." She turned and walked back out into the city, where she now stood on her own terms. Victor Harrowton was indicted. 3 felony charges. Federal. The kind that came with real time. Camilla's name was listed in the documents, not as a defendant, not yet, but as a person of interest. A term that sounded sterile on paper, but in whispered circles of the elite, it meant something far worse. Untrustworthy. She stopped being invited to fundraisers. Her brand deals evaporated overnight. The glossy magazine covers she used to grace now refused to run her image, citing editorial shifts. But the real blow came quietly. She tried to open a new foundation under her mother's name, a rebranding, a chance at reinvention. The application was denied, not for paperwork errors, for ethics review concerns. Meanwhile, Jade had just wrapped a panel on equity and ethics at a university where she once couldn't afford tuition. She walked off stage to a standing ovation. A young man approached her backstage, nervous, stammering, his hands shaking slightly as he held out a photo. It was a picture of his mother. "She was a line cook at Maison," he said. "Camilla made her cry once. Fired her for being too slow." He swallowed hard. "She passed away last year. But she would have loved you." Jade took the photo gently, nodding through the emotion rising in her throat. "Thank you for remembering her," she said. "That matters." The man hesitated. "Do you think Camilla will ever understand what she did?" Jade looked down at the photo, then out toward the campus quad where students laughed and music played in the distance. "I don't know," she said. "But whether she does or not, the world does now." Months passed. Not fast, not easy, but enough for change to take root. Jade sat in a sunlit conference room, this time not as someone serving food, but as a policy advisor. The city had invited her to help draft new ethics legislation on housing and zoning. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same halls that once echoed with decisions made about people like her now had to listen to her voice. She didn't come in with revenge. She came in with receipts and reforms. Her recommendations were sharp, data-driven, and impossible to ignore. Protections for tenants. Transparency in campaign funding. whistleblower protections, equitable land use policies. Across the table, a council member leaned forward, impressed. You ever think about running for office? He asked. Jade smiled faintly. I think about building things that last. He nodded. Well, you're already doing that. Later that afternoon, she walked past the newly named Justice Commons, a housing project once slated to be replaced by a Harrowton luxury condo tower. Now, thanks to public pressure and legal intervention, it had been preserved and was undergoing community-led renovation. Children played on swings outside. Murals bloomed across brick walls. Hope, once smothered, was now painted in color. Jade paused, watching a little girl draw chalk hearts on the sidewalk. She remembered being that girl once, dreaming in a world designed to ignore her. But now she helped shape it, not by asking for a seat at the table, but by building a new one and inviting others in. Camilla Harrowton sat alone in a quiet room that once hosted press junkets and champagne tastings. Now it smelled like dust and disuse. She scrolled through her phone. No new calls. No invitations. No salvaged image. Just silence. She considered reaching out. Drafted an apology more than once. But the words always came out wrong. Too careful. Too clean. Too late. So she didn't send it. And Jade never asked for it. Across town, Jade stood at the edge of a neighborhood garden. Once an empty lot targeted by Harrowton developers, now a green space for families and elders. She smiled as an older woman pressed fresh herbs into her palm. Take it, child, the woman said. You've planted more than seeds here. Jade thanked her, brushing dirt from her jeans, then turned to greet a group of high school volunteers arriving to help. Their eyes lit up when they saw her, not because of fame, but because she felt real. She led them with quiet confidence. And as they worked, digging, planting, laughing, Jade felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not because justice was perfect, not because systems were suddenly fair, but because she had chosen not to be destroyed by cruelty. She had chosen to rise and help others rise with her. Far away, in that silent room, Camilla stared at a blinking cursor in an unsent email draft. She wouldn't press send, and maybe that was fitting, because the apology Jade deserved never came. And yet, she thrived anyway. Spring came quietly. The city, scarred but shifting, began to bloom again. Jade sat beneath a tree in a community park she'd helped protect from private takeover, reading, listening to birdsong between car horns. The book in her lap wasn't political theory or legal doctrine. It was poetry. She'd spent so long fighting, researching, surviving. Now, she was remembering how to simply be. Malik joined her with 2 coffees. You know, he said, handing her one. You could rest if you wanted. Take a break. You've earned it. Jade smiled. Rest isn't retreat. It's strategy. He laughed, always thinking 3 moves ahead. She took a sip. Not moves, just roots. I want what we plant to last. In the distance, kids played on a jungle gym wrapped in murals. One of them, a little girl with tight braids and a bright blue shirt, looked over at Jade and waved. Jade waved back, heart full. Malik watched the exchange. She probably doesn't even know what you did. She doesn't need to, Jade replied. She just needs to know she belongs here. They sat in silence for a moment, the world turning gently. Then Jade added, almost to herself, I used to think justice looked like punishment, but now I think it looks like planting something no one can uproot. And with that, she leaned back against the tree, the wind soft through the leaves above, the city slowly growing into something new. Not perfect, but possible. Camilla walked through a museum, one her family had once heavily sponsored. Her name, once etched on a plaque near the donor wing, had been removed. Quietly, deliberately, she paused in front of an exhibit about protest art. Images of resistance painted on torn fabric, cardboard, even broken mirrors. She stared at one piece longer than the others. It was titled Unheard. It showed a black woman standing alone in a crowd of blurred, faceless figures, her back straight, her eyes calm, her silence louder than their noise. It wasn't Jade. Not literally, but Camilla saw her in it. She took a step back and blinked quickly, the sting behind her eyes unfamiliar. Not regret, not yet, but something that might become it, if she let it. A child tugged at her mother nearby, pointing at the painting. "She looks brave," the little girl said. "She does," her mother replied. Camilla left the museum without saying a word. Meanwhile, in a university lecture hall filled with students of every color, background, and dream, Jade stood at the front, leading a seminar titled Power and Narrative. Who gets to speak? She wasn't lecturing. She was listening, drawing ideas out of the room, inviting students to challenge her, each other, and the structures they'd inherited. "You don't have to be perfect to demand change," she told them. "You just have to be willing to lose comfort for truth." A young woman raised her hand. "How do we know when it's working?" Jade smiled. "When the people who were never supposed to speak start being heard." In the back row, a student scribbled the quote in bold, underlined it twice. Camilla sat across from a therapist in a quiet, warmly lit room, a place she would have once mocked. Now, it was the only space where she could breathe without performance. "I don't know who I am without the family name," she admitted. "Without the armor." The therapist waited, gentle. "I always thought the power came from us. The Herotans. The money. The access." She looked down. But it was borrowed power, built on silence, on people we never bothered to see. The therapist asked softly, "What made you start seeing them?" Camilla hesitated. Then, she didn't flinch. She didn't say Jade's name. She didn't have to. It lived in every thought that had changed her. Meanwhile, Jade visited her parents' old neighborhood, where the corner store now had fresh produce, where rent protections were finally law, where people greeted her not as a hero, but as someone who belonged. She stopped by the old rec center, now renamed the Thompson Community House, not by her doing, but by those who had watched her rise. Inside, a group of teenagers worked on debate prep. One looked up and lit up. "Jade," he called, "can you help me with this argument? I keep folding under pressure." She smiled and sat beside him. "Let me show you something," she said, drawing a line across his paper. "Pressure doesn't break you. It reveals what's already strong." He nodded, eyes focused. In that moment, Jade realized something. Her legacy wouldn't be headlines or lawsuits or speeches. It would be hands lifted higher because she had stood, not in anger, in clarity. Let me know when you're ready for part 23. Here's part 23 of the apology that never came. Part 23, the letter that was never sent. Camilla sat at her desk, pen in hand, a blank sheet of paper before her. She had written versions of this letter before, deleted emails, unsent messages, whispered rehearsals in the dark. But this time, she wrote it by hand. "Jade, you were right to stand. You were right not to kneel. And I was everything you saw in me that night. Entitled, cruel, and cowardly. I thought power made me untouchable. I didn't understand then that real power comes from conviction, not control. You didn't just expose me. You revealed something I needed to see in myself. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, your refusal to shrink changed more than headlines. It changed me. And I'm trying, quietly, and far too late, to become someone worthy of the space I've taken." She folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, but didn't address it. She placed it in a drawer and closed it gently. Some apologies aren't meant to be heard. They're meant to be lived. That same evening, Jade sat in a circle of women at a community organizing session. They were brainstorming ways to support displaced tenants in other cities, sharing strategies, swapping stories. Jade listened more than she spoke, until one woman asked, "How did you find the courage to keep going?" Jade looked around the room, brown faces, tired eyes, fire burning quietly behind them all. "I didn't," she said simply. "Courage found me. In silence. In injustice. In the moment someone tried to make me disappear." She smiled, not bitter, but resolute. "And I made a choice not to vanish." The gala stage was long gone. The lawsuits were settled. Some quietly, some loudly. Victor Harrowton now lived in self-imposed exile. No interviews, no appearances. His empire fractured, gutted from the inside by the truth he thought he could outrun. Camilla, meanwhile, taught art workshops in underserved schools. She refused cameras, avoided fundraisers. She didn't correct the children who didn't know her name. She liked it better that way. And Jade? Jade was exactly where she belonged. Everywhere power was being challenged, reshaped, made more just. She spoke less these days. But when she did, the rooms leaned forward. A reporter once asked her, "Do you think you've won?" She smiled. "I think I've begun." At a ribbon cutting for a new tenant-run housing cooperative, a girl no older than 8 clutched a flyer with Jade's face on it. Her mother leaned down and said, "That's her. That's the one who stood up." The girl looked at Jade and asked, "Did it hurt?" Saying no, Jade knelt, not in submission, but in solidarity. "It didn't hurt," she said, "but it did cost something. Was it worth it?" Jade paused, then nodded. Every second, as the crowd cheered and the ribbon fell, Jade didn't raise her arms in victory. She reached for others instead. Because power, she'd learned, wasn't something you hold. It was something you share. Years passed. Names faded from headlines. Buildings changed owners. Faces came and went from politics and power. But some things endured. A scholarship fund quietly bore Jade's name, created not by her, but by former service workers she'd helped organize. It paid for the education of young people whose parents once cleaned the floors of the places that ignored them. One of those students, an immigrant son, first in his family to attend college, wrote in his graduation speech, "This opportunity wasn't built by charity. It was built by someone who refused to be humiliated into silence." Elsewhere, Camilla Harrowton lived a quieter life. She volunteered at shelters under a pseudonym, walked to work, took the train. Sometimes, people looked at her like they recognized her, but couldn't quite place from where. She never corrected them. She was still learning how to exist without entitlement, how to repair without performance. One day, she passed a bookstore window and froze. A display showed a memoir. Asterisk the apology that never came. Asterisk. Jade's name glinted in silver on the spine. Camilla didn't go inside. She just stood there, the weight of the title settling over her. Not with shame, with understanding. And somewhere else, Jade sat beneath a tree in a quiet park. No cameras, no speeches, just a notebook in her lap and the wind in her hair. A child nearby laughed, carefree. Jade smiled, because in the end, it was never about vengeance. It was about truth, about choosing dignity over silence, integrity over comfort, roots over crowns. And in doing so, she gave the world something rare. A woman who refused to kneel and taught others to rise. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.